try to look into the future. This is a horoscope. I have no idea what it means, but it's a horoscope. It's about looking into the future. If I look into the future, not as a visionary, but as someone who has been part of the future for the last 20 years, in the sense that I've been sort of always in the discussion of where is it design is now and where it's heading. And so I've sort of followed this development for the last 20 years. So that makes me at least able to have some qualified guesses of where it is that design is moving. And where I see design moving is into a number of interesting areas where design is not yet really something that people take for granted. So I was just thinking I would try to sort of look at what could be the future of design practice, provided design remains the same. It remains that motivation of actually helping people to understand better, to function better, to relate more positively to whatever product, service, environment they are faced with. I believe that there is a wealth of opportunities in what they call the experience economy. What is the experience economy? The experience economy is this movement that going into store is no longer just about buying a thing and go out again. It's also about getting an experience, a sensation when you're in there. It doesn't always happen in your local mini market, even though that could be an experience in itself. But if you look at some big brands like, do you know Abercrombie & Fitch? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Men's or young people's garments. That is not a store. That is a sensation of smell, very strong, of visual impact, of music, of it's almost like going to a nightclub for 15 minutes in the middle of the day, because you go into this universe, and obviously the whole idea is that that universe makes you want to buy a product, but the means of doing it is to actually give you a strong experience as you do it. That is an example of what the experience economy is. It is to take a fairly banal transaction and then put an experience around it. And that is something that I can see that designers are being used more and more to do, both in the digital universe, so that if online banking is not just putting in the numbers, but it also blends into an experience, because you get all kinds of extra information, and it builds up sort of a private sort of universe around you. So understanding that concept of user journeys, what a user journey is. Well, a user journey is from you enter a store until you leave again. What do you experience? What is the sort of the journey you make? If you want to make a travel, if you go to an airport, from you go through the door until you enter the plane, you will in average have about 20 to 25 different things you have to do. You know, you have to go to the counter, check in, all these things, either on a machine or in the counter. You have to go through security. You might have to go through passport. You want to exchange some money. You want to do a lot of stuff until you leave the airport. That is a journey. And how do you make that journey an experience which is as positive as possible, and also which is as understandable as possible? I mean, I travel very often, so to me it's like I do it because that's part of what I do. But if someone travels for the first time, it can be very complicated, all these things that you have to relate to during that stay in an airport. To understand what these barriers are for people, either because they haven't traveled before or because they are perhaps old, so this digital thing of checking in online, all that's something very scary and strange, or whatever it is, to make that journey as comfortable, as reassuring, as unscary as possible. That is something that no one can do better than designers, because no one understands that feeling of insecurity, of resilience than designers. So I think that there is a huge amount of challenges in the whole concept of designing experiences and user journeys. Whether you come from communication or from architecture or from whatever, I think it doesn't matter, because you do the same thing. You analyze and understand that situation and try to find out what could make this situation more attractive, less scary, easier, more comfortable. A quite hot concept right now is CSR. Do you know CSR? It means corporate social responsibility. It means that companies do not only produce something, sell it, and make the profit, but companies also either feel or are expected to show some kind of responsibility for the community they are part of. Meaning that they are expected to be responsible with regard to the environment. They're expected to be responsible with regard to perhaps taking in people with disabilities or handicaps, of not throwing out people who might, just because they're getting old or whatever, of supporting the local community, of being part of a society, not only being an island of profit making, but also being part of society. They just don't know how to do it. And I think that designers are good at understanding what a company could do to become more integrated in society and to show responsibility, because you can identify with the same skill set and the same sensitivity. You can understand what would add value to this company besides that core service or product that they deliver. And that is also, it's still a new field, but it's one of the areas I have some friends, designer friends, who now have moved into exclusively working with helping companies to understand how they can become more socially responsible. And there's, to me, it's obvious that if someone should help a company to do it, it has to be designers. Complexity. Things become more and more complicated, that's one thing. But complicated is not the same as complex. Complex is, the fact that some things are complicated is very often because they're poorly designed, But complexity is just a fact. Complexity is about how many factors play a role. And we just live in a time where the world becomes more and more complex. And a lot of people have a big problem with dealing with complexity, because either because they grew up in a different time. I mean, not everyone is as young as you are, not even as young as I am. I mean, there are people who just have not the same skills of dealing with complexity. And I think that designers could very easily be the translators, so that people are being helped to deal with the complexity just of the fact that more and more services move into the digital arena. I don't know how it is here, but for example, in Denmark, you don't, by 2015, all cities, all municipalities in Denmark, they stop all kinds of paper communication with their citizens. Everything, all dialogue between the municipality and the citizen will be digital. There will be no more papers. I think it's great. My mom, she does not think it's great because she doesn't even have a computer. She doesn't know how to do it. She have no idea. And perhaps dealing with that issue, making that new reality accessible also to people with different understandings, that is something you could do, because you can sort of take this sort of thingy, complex situation, and say, okay, what does it consist of? Is this operation, and is this operation, and is this fact, and is this factor? And if you pull them together and say, perhaps if we put them together in this sequence instead, then it would be rather easy for anyone to do it. It can be about just making the language easier. It can, very often. It can also be about just making the operation as logical as possible so that you can actually understand it even without being a specialist. But the whole concept of dealing with complexity is one of the challenges that I see designers really working with in the future. Then we have the public services. As I said, it's already there. Designers work a lot with public services, and we know that the public, or the public sector will be expected to deal with more and more things. Childcare, I never went to a kindergarten because my mom was home, so she took care of me, sort of, until I started school. Today, that is not possible because all children go to kindergarten, full stop. So more and more services are moving out of the private sphere and being taken care of by the public. And these services, they have to be designed to work well. So I think that there's a fantastic opportunity for designers to use their skills in that context. And that's about health, welfare, aging, social services. How do you design schemes, for example, where more and more kids grow up with one parent because parents are divorced or whatever, and their parents are divorced. So the whole concept of grandparents, about 30% of all children in Scandinavia, they don't have a grandparent, in the sense, of course, biologically they do, but they don't have a relation to anyone in that generation. I think that's sad, because you lose a whole lot of transfer of tradition and knowledge and understanding. How can you design a good, sensible, practical way for kids who do not have grandparents to actually meet with people of that generation? You know, how can you make that a system? In Denmark, there are some tests on it made by designers where they actually made environments where kindergartens and elderly homes are in the same buildings, and where they eat lunch together and where they do stuff, so they build relations in that setting. Transportation, mobility, infrastructure. We do move around a lot, and we also know that we have a big challenge with CO2 and global warming and all kinds of stuff. It's not a very good thing that we all use our cars if we have one, and we need to deal with how we make transport less environmentally sort of damaging, but also how we make our everyday work. I think that the metro system here in St. Petersburg works quite well, in the sense that, you know, it's very easy to understand. You know, you buy pay 28 rubles and you get this coin. It's just like going to the laundromat and you put it in and then you give it. But if you're not Russian speaking, it is very difficult to understand where am I going, which direction, and because you're not really being helped. So just making it easy to take public transport or choose public transportation instead of taking a taxi or a car is a way of encouraging public transportation, which automatically has a positive effect on the environment. I think there are some interesting challenges in transportation, mobility, and infrastructure. For example, in Milan, they have very well-functioning system, but there's just one thing. You have absolutely no idea where there is a metro station because they don't have signs. They have this idea that that's something you just know. So just understanding that, okay, people have different needs, and to make this more sort of an easier operation, there could be changes made. Learning, employment, human resource. I have to refer to friends because friends is, people I know. I have a textile designer friend. She was trained as a textile designer, but she thought that I want to make more of a difference than just make a nice textile. So she started working with how textiles could change your perception of comfort in elderly homes, and people, how that feeling of textiles had an impact on their well-being. And then she moved slowly out of the textiles and focused on well-being, and then moved into what kind of conditions do people react to, positively, negatively. And today she's the human resource director of a huge company in Denmark, because she has understood what does it take to make people, what does it make to create environments that make people perform better. And she does it because she has a training as a designer, but she has then moved it slowly out of that making stuff, but using the core of it, the understanding, to do something else. And I think that there are fantastic opportunities in the labor market. Diversity and integration. How do you make people work together even though they don't understand each other from start? We have some huge problems in Denmark. Denmark had some years ago, we had a government which with a party, sort of very right-wing party, who just didn't like foreigners. We don't like foreigners. So they did everything they could to close the borders of Denmark so that we didn't get new refugees and others in. That doesn't work. We know that doesn't work. You cannot close borders. I mean, the world is becoming too sort of fluent for that. So instead of trying to just close borders, say we don't like foreigners because they make life so complicated for us, perhaps we could say, how can we design structures and environments which make it easier to exist even though you're different? How can we make people with different cultures actually function well together? I think that can be designed. I mean, politicians, they think they design it, and that's because that's what they think that they're supposed to do, but they don't have that sensitivity. So I'm not saying that you should all become parliamentarians and do the work of the politicians, but when the politicians have made decisions, then I think it's time for designers to come and say, good, now we can take over and make this functional, make it in a way which resonates with what people actually need. Does this sound absolutely gibberish? Is this like, yeah, good for you? Do you believe in this? Okay, I do. Bureaucracy. That's something you are specialists in Russia. Most public procedures can actually be reduced. I mean, most of them are, they're not necessary. Let's face it. You can't just change it overnight. But I think that as countries mature, it becomes a natural sort of expectation that you also reduce the level of bureaucracy. So that, I don't know, for example, if you want a new passport, how do you do that here? What kind of procedure is attached to that?
I think now it's not so complicated. It's not so complicated. You could use internet to make an order to make a new passport.
Новый паспорт Российской Федерации?
Ну, новый паспорт заграничный сделать достаточно просто.
Нет,
за последние полгода.
Нет, просто разница большая. Восстановление утерянного паспорта Российской Федерации, это 23 штуки.
Нет, это тоже не сложно, видите, да? Да, все было еще хуже, чем сейчас.
Or if you want to start a company, how's that? Does it take time? Is it?
Take time, but not so complicated. But
I don't know, but I don't want to think about making a new passport and you.
I feel it is.
Anyway, it's not. It's not. You will have not a good experience.
You will not. No. Okay. Because I think that all these operations, they are complicated and cumbersome because a lot of people in administration, there are two reasons. They want to keep their jobs. And also because a lot of them, they don't think that it can be done differently because that's the way we always have done it. But actually, you can do most of it differently. And you can see a lot of different examples of it around the world. For example, your tax reports, in Denmark now, I don't do that myself. In the sense that everything that has a relevance for my tax is reported directly into a system from my employer or from whoever. And then it just pulls in there, and then at the end of the year, that machine, that system, sort of makes a tax statement for me and sends it digital to me, and then I look through it, and unless I know something that the system doesn't know, I just click, I accept it, and then it's done. Then I have done my tax. That can be done. And Denmark was not the first. Australia was actually the first to do that. So I mean, you can design much more user-friendly ways of doing serious stuff. You don't want to underestimate the seriousness of tax, but you don't have to equal serious with complicated. So I think there are some quite interesting challenges in working with this. Both in public sector, but also in private sector, where you have banking, insurance, and pensions. Just the fact that I can do all my banking on this one. I don't need any, I can pay my bills. I can do whatever I want. And the interesting thing is that the country in the world where online banking or iPhone banking has come the furthest. Where do you think that is? It's Kenya. You know why?
Why?
Because they never had telephones. They never had telephones, in the old way. So they jumped from nothing to digital telephone-based systems. So today, this is just how they do it. They don't know anything else. So there are some interesting dynamics. Recruitment and loyalty. How do you, right now in most of Europe, there's fairly high unemployment rates. But if we just go 5 years back, 6 years back, it was very difficult to find good people because, I mean, we basically had a shortage of skilled both workers and people with higher education. How can organizations, how can companies attract the best possible people? I think it's by organizing and designing their workspaces, by their work environments, their benefits, and the whole structures in a way which makes it more attractive to work in that company and in the other company. Sustainability. It's too big to sort of start discussing sustainability, but I think that the whole idea of making people understand that everything we do leaves a footprint. And so that we, all of us on an individual basis, as groups, as companies, as society, have a responsibility of actually sort of thinking about what we do, and then help people do it. You know, make it easy for people to take that responsibility. I think that is one of the biggest and most challenging challenges for designers to do that. Oh, that's also very difficult, but a lot of innovation comes from the laboratory, where scientists, they find a new drug or a new thing, whatever, something in in physics class. But I think that there is a quite interesting intersection between that science and then the understanding that designers have of how that can be used. Because very often you have the problem that scientists, they find a drug or a treatment or a something, but they have no clue how to sort of make it real. And I think that understanding of possible problems that could be solved is something that designers can help with. That's the multidisciplinarity again, that if designers link up with people with other specialties, I think there's something very interesting can happen. And then there are probably a lot of others. Did I miss something? Can you see some possibilities that I didn't mention? They are there. And I think that the key to this is very much that designers have to get used to the fact that they can be designers in the old sense of the word on their own. But if they want to use the design competence and that sensitivity and that specific unique skill to really make big changes, they have to become part of a value chain. They have to understand that I am not Philip Stark, I will never be Philip Stark, I don't want to be Philip Stark. I'm just like the others, like the engineers and the technicians and the scientists. I am someone who has something special to bring to the table, but it will not be my creation. I will just have contributed to a creation together with a lot of other people. And I think that's one of the biggest, perhaps, barriers in designers, individuals, that they want to be creators. They have this dream of seeing their name on something. And that is not compatible with this. I mean, if you want to see your name on something, you have to basically to make chairs or lamps or silver goodware or something, because that's where you have that opportunity. But if you pursue this direction, then you just have to accept that then you are just one out of many, but it doesn't reduce the value of what you do. It just puts it into a different context. So the designer is no longer a one-man army. We all bring different tools to the table, and designers have these unique tools that we have discussed today. But I think it's very much about finding out what is my point of excellence, what is it that I can bring into an environment, and how do you argue that? How do you go to a group of scientists and say, hey, you need my input. I know something that can help you. I can be part of your team because I have a different angle on developing, for example, a new material. And what have you already learned in school? What did you have before you went to design school? What did you learn in design school? And what do you need to build on top of that? I believe that if designers, as most do, stop educating themselves when they graduate, they will never be part of this. If you want to be part of this, you have to continuously sort of fill on with new knowledge and new inspiration and new angles, and meet with people and discuss. There's a lot of new knowledge to acquire if you want to be part of this. And how do you work with others? How do you fit into these teams? I think a lot of people in design school, they liked the idea of working in groups and all that, but the very moment they come out of their designer sort of cocoon, they find it very difficult to work with others. And I think it's important that everyone finds his own way of fitting into teamwork in these multidisciplinary contexts. And then I think it's very important, as we go back to that one, what is it that I want? What is my target? What is my aim? What do I want to make a difference on? So it is very much about how do I frame my professional identity. I think, whether you are a communication designer, product designer, architect, interior architect, textile designer, whatever you're a designer. And then you have it's just like doctors. I mean, there are like 100 different kinds of specialists. You have cardiologists, and you have urologists, and you have gynecologists, and you have all kinds of people. They're all doctors. They just have their specialties. You're all designers. You have your specialties. The problem is that in the doctor sort of context, everyone knows what a urologist is, or psychologist, not psychologists, not doctors, but these different specialties. Because it's very clearly defined, and there's legislation and there's certification and all this. That's not the case here. For designers, you have traditionally 4 or 5 different kinds. You have sort of product designers, communication, all this. And that's not what it looks like today, because you have all these blends. So I think it's very important that every one of you and all the others try to work with what is my professional identity. How do I frame that? What is my specialty? I'm a designer, but what is my way of being a designer? What is it that I want to use it for? And to do that, there is no way around I call it a business plan. It's not like if you want to start a big company, but it's a process of taking all the elements, your ambitions and the knowledge you have, the knowledge you need, and what kind of context you want to work in, all that, and put it into some kind of a plan. And it might take some preparations. But it's very much about how do you find the story that you want to tell, to sort of to open the doors for yourself. And how do you tell it, and to whom? And also, how do you measure your own success? When do you feel that you have succeeded? If you don't know that, there's absolutely no reason to believe that you will succeed. You might do something fantastic, but if you don't have an image of when I have succeeded, what makes me feel that I succeeded? If you don't have that image, you will never succeed. I mean, it doesn't make sense to succeed if you don't have a measure for success. Who do you want to serve, and how do you find them? I mean, where do you find your market? Where do you find the space where you want to make a difference? And who do you want to work with, and how do you find them? Do you want to work with other designers or architects? Or do you want to work with people with totally different background? And how do you find the right people? It takes a lot of preparation to do that. And what is my method? What is my process? If I get a job or if I see a problem, how do I work with it? Where do I start? And how do I work with it? What kind of sequence do I work with? What kind of method? I believe that if you want to tell the world that you can help them change the world, you have to also be able to tell how you will do it. What do you want to make a difference? And is there something you don't want to design? Is there something you don't want to be part of? This is not real war. This is computer game. If I were a designer, I would never be part of making war games, because to me that is just not an ethical thing. I see war games as directly contributing to people's aggression. I don't want to be part of that. That's my own very personal thing, but I think we all have things that we just don't want to be part of, and I think it's very important that we have a clear picture of that. And how much of your time do you want to dedicate to your work? I mean, designers are of the species who are basically working 24 hours a day because it becomes a lifestyle. But I think it's important that you have a clear sort of understanding of, do I want to do that? Do I want to be a 24/7 work designer, or do I want to have a life which has nothing to do with design on the side? And what do you want to do for yourself in return? I mean, if you succeed, how do you sort of reward yourself? That's also something which I think everyone needs to be clear about. And that's the same whether you want to pursue social design or design in the big scale, or if you want to be the world's best or Russia's best chair designer. It doesn't really matter. I think what matters is that you all need to have a clear vision of what is it I want with my professional life, and what does it take to get there. This is the last exercise. It's only it's not 10 minutes. It's only 2 minutes. And it's you don't even have to do it there. I'll just explain, because we're getting very close to 9. I'll explain it to you. Do it when you get home, or do it together with someone. But I think it's especially for designers who, in my opinion, can make a difference almost in any sort of conceivable part of society. To find out where that could be, then try to see, okay, I am a designer, that's my professional identity. But if I hadn't become a designer, what would I have become? Most of us have, well, I want to be a designer or a lawyer, or I want to be a designer or an electrician, or whatever, something. That other thing is a latent, is an underlying deep interest that you have. Just like you became designer because you had this urge or sensitivity that you wanted to sort of materialize. If you had this second option of being a cook, then it's because you have this urge of making good food or something. Yeah, but it's true. I mean, most of us have this thing that we also thought about wanting to do. So try to think back, what was that? And then the other question is, what do I like to do when I'm not designing? What is my favorite pastime? Where is it my passion is when I'm not designing? Is it ballet, or is it war games, or what is it? And if you try to take the fact that you have training as a designer, so you had these tools and skills of a designer, and you have this latent understanding of some other field, and then you have this passion. If you try to see, do these three have something to do with each other? Where could I fit these three different dimensions in? If you find that, that is very likely to be where you have a unique contribution to make. And this is not just a game, this is also a scientific sort of process to try to find out where is it that I am, where do I have a specific sort of talent. And perhaps you don't find it, but I'm quite sure that the process of trying to find out will open up some ideas about where it could be interesting to apply your design skills. So, I'm closing down before we take this last question and answers. To me, it's all about making informed and qualified choices. I mean, we all make choices every day. Some of them are stupid. Sad to say, but that's, at least for me, that's the case. I make a whole lot of stupid choices. But I do make some good choices as well. And the good choices are good because they are based on a conscious process of understanding, of seeking information, of processing, and then making a qualified choice. And I think when it comes to where do I put my professional resources, I think that deserves a process of seeking information, processing, and making the best possible information. And I think the future is yours to create. I mean, the future as a designer is very much up to the individual designer. I think there are so many possibilities. Not all of them are here yet, but they come slowly. Designers are moving into all kinds of fields, and what you have as professional skills becomes more and more valuable and more appreciated every day. And I think that being a young designer today is a great privilege in the sense that you have a really future-proof professional path in front of you compared to a lot of others who have the future is way behind them. I'll send you, if you want to, the presentation, and in that presentation there are some links which could be helpful to see how people work with some of these things. There is the ideal, which I referred to earlier. There are some toolkits for how you work with service design, good for all of you, I think. And there is Design to Improve Life, which is this huge international design competition, which is about finding design projects which really makes a difference to people in Africa or whatever. It's design in a new context. And then there's a toolbox here in the European Design Association where you can find very tangible tools for how you can make a better brief, a better contract, all these things. I think that could be helpful. Some good cases here for how designers have worked with sustainability projects. And then my own little website at the end where you can see a few of my ideas on design and some of the things that I've been working on. So that's about it. Unless you have questions, and if you do, please, I'll hang on as long as you want. But that's what I wanted to tell you. I hope that there's just one little thing each one of you can take with you home.